everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Miraculous Thinking. I'm your host, Elenique Marie, and with me, my friend, Crystal Ann Compton. And today we will be exploring chapters 4, 5, and 6 from The Search for Truth by Michael A. Singer. And as we mentioned last week, next week and the following week, we will be reading our little book, Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And that'll wrap out the month of April. So if you haven't ordered Illusions already, you are in time to get it, because it's always fun when you get to read the book together. I think you get so much more out of it. So we invite you to do that.
Absolutely.
And anything that I left out, Crystal?
Yeah, and I just want to remind you that we have a Facebook community. If you're on Facebook, come and check us out, Miraculous Thinking, link in the description. We have a YouTube. You might be watching on YouTube. And if you are, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow, all the good things. And if you didn't know about our YouTube, you better go there and check us out, because we put something out every Monday, I believe. We release the audio version of the pod on a Wednesday, and then the video version is released on YouTube on Monday. And also, we love to hear from you. You guys come up with a lot of good thoughts and commentary.
Very good thoughts.
First of all, testimonials, but also questions that cause us to go a little deeper. So we love to hear from you. And if you want to write us, you can do so by sending us an email at miraculousthinking@gmail.com. That's miraculousthinking, one word, @gmail.com. That's all I had to add. That's it.
Fabulous. Then let's jump in. Today, we are starting with chapter 4, and I have my trusty little book here because I have so much highlighted things that I want to discuss that I didn't even know. Chapter 4 is called The Exploration of the Conscious, Subconscious, and Superconscious Minds. And he begins the chapter by saying that one question that we had left unanswered in the previous chapter was, how do humans obtain the energy which we continually expend on the physical, emotional, and mental planes? And I thought, this is a very good question. And basically, he gets into the fact that, most of us think that we get it from food or from the sun, that the plants and vegetables absorb the energy of the sun, and we eat the plants and the vegetables, and therefore we get the energy in our bodies to move and to breathe and to do all of that. Or we eat animals, so we get the energy from the sun secondarily through the plants that they have eaten, because they're getting the energy from the plants, which kind of just means, it's a good idea to consider a diet that has more plants than meat, because we will be getting that energy directly. However, he says that doesn't make a lot of sense, because we've already established that we are energy in the previous chapter. And if we are energy, then what is happening? Where else are we receiving energy from? Or what are we interacting with besides the gross elements of plants and sunshine in order to be nurtured? And so he says that by now, so often energy has flowed to he's talking about habits. And I love this. He said, okay, now we have throughout the day, in every action that we take, we're directing a proper amount of energy to the necessary location, right? So every time we eat, we have this energy, and then we think certain thoughts, we act in a certain way, we do certain physical things. And over time, we do these things so much over and over. He describes it like this: thus the habit, any habit that you have, is an energy flow pattern which has become so fixed that little or no additional conscious willpower is required to carry out the action. And he likens it to a stream that when it first starts to run across the land, you really don't notice it, but over time you get something like the Grand Canyon, right? So over time, it carves a path. And then that becomes so deep, he says, that the deeper the channel, you don't need any conscious attention anymore. It's just your default. That's where you're going to go. And he says, but now if we wish to alter the direction of the stream, we must exert tremendous power of will to do so, which is what we were talking about with thought forms last week, right? And so it is with a habit. In the beginning, it is our conscious willpower which directs the energy flow. So he's talking about the conscious mind. We have the conscious and we have the subconscious. We need to act from the conscious mind and utilize willpower if we are to change the things that we have imprinted into our subconscious mind through repetitive, doings over and over, and thinking and thinking and doing. And so he says that we see that each of us definitely does have control over the energy flowing within our bodies, because we can choose to exercise will in order to change our subconscious habits or behaviors. And furthermore, the degree of this control is dependent upon how strongly and how consciously we utilize that willpower, which is again what we were talking about last week. The spiritual path is a path of utilizing will and conscious attention, which we learn by harnessing our thoughts and our energy through meditation and through discipline, in order to be able to choose and hold your attention on that new pattern that you're trying to create. What did you think about that?
I mean, it makes sense. Where does the energy come from to impress upon? Okay, so I'm just trying to find the source of the energy that I'm using to impress upon the different stations. He also calls this in the next chapter, like my body, my energy is going to my body processes. My energy is going to my conscious mind. My energy is going to the subconscious. Like where does the energy come from that allows you to impose energy flow for these things?
Well, that's a combination of, and that's why he says you have the combination of the physical energy that you're getting. And we've established this, and this is important because I think a lot of times when you get on the spiritual path, you think the only energy is the energy that's coming from God or from and it is when you get to a certain level. That's the only kind that you need. So, but we do need to ground down into having a sustainable lifestyle. So I think it's important to speak to that physical body and that conscious mind. It's create a healthy state within the body. Because if you don't have a healthy state, you can't channel anything. Secondarily,
wait. Do you really think so? So what about people who have an unhealthy body, or they wrestle with chronic illnesses or autoimmune, and so they're compromised somewhat? Do they not have the necessary fuel source to impress their will?
Well, as somebody, I can only speak for myself, and maybe I'm limited in that way. But I know that when I have pain, sitting for meditation and really being in that place of stillness is harder. If my legs are cramping, it's harder. Just like doing anything when you're starving, like when you're hungry, you get distracted. I mean, you are in a physical vessel. And that's why I say, if you are an ascended master, or you've already mastered certain things that you're so awakened while being in this body, then I suppose you could transcend all of that. Like the people that say that they live off of the sun. They don't eat. What are those people called? Breatharians.
Correct.
They live off of breath, and they get the prana from and I believe it's probably true. I'm sure it can be done, but it's a few and far between people. And I think even Jesus, I think he has a quote of Jesus saying, that I live from breath, or I live from the breath of God, or something. He has some quote in there where he hints that Jesus doesn't really even live from physical sustenance, but from his own way of processing divine energy.
Is that man lives not by bread alone?
Yes, I think I'm going to look it up for you, because it's in the chapter. It's in the chapter in the last chapter where we talk about the search based on religious teachings. I'm going to look it up for you right now.
As you do that, I was just going to say that trying to ask the question, where does my energy come from, to animate all these areas of my life and these processes? It kind of takes me back to the idea of the oneness of the light just being differentiated, but the source of that light is always there. And I am the source of that light. I'm part of that light. And so I have within me, I think it stands to reason, an infinite resource of light. Now, of course, that shows up in a different way in a physicalized form, because I also need water, I also need food, I also need to do these different things to exist here. But as a consciousness, I have all the energy all the time, because I am the energy all the time. Everything is happening.
Exactly. You are the energy. And I think that was, thank you for putting it so clearly, that if you are the energy, it's just a matter of vibrating in alignment with the energy that you need in order to fuel yourself with health, with energy, with all of it. And the trick is, how do you clear all those chakras so that energy can like Kundalini, right? Like if you can just let it go. But no, the chapter that I was referring to, or the quote, he said, we showed how energy. He said in chapter 4, we showed how energy could be made available from the superconscious level, which is what you're describing, right? From the all. This high vibration of energy is a very direct source, very close to the original word, the Om vibration. Thus, the Bible states, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And in the meanwhile, his disciples prayed him, saying, Master, eat. But he said unto them, I have meat to eat that ye know not of. Right?
Yeah.
And so here we are again with these like hints, that Jesus is constantly giving, saying, this is not real, guys. There's another level from which you can be experiencing this exact same experience, but you have to wake up.
Right. Yes. And when you reference, or when Jesus references, or the scripture references every word out of the mouth of God that proceeds from the mouth of God, we think, oh, God's speaking words, but really what that's talking about is logos. It's talking about creation through word, through energy. It's about, I'm living on the energy and the vibe of creation. That which created me continues to animate me.
Yes.
Right. And so I wonder if, and I can certainly see that it's possible that you reach a state, and I know, yogis are doing all kinds of crazy things with the rainbow body and everything, but you reach a certain state where you're sustaining yourself without the need for all of these other things that we need, the normies, to stay alive.
Yes, exactly. And something really cool that he delves into in this chapter is the relationship between consciousness and energy, which I thought was genius, right?
Okay.
So he says, so as with the case with our earlier analysis of energy flow, our study of the consciousness flow has led us to the conclusion that there must be something else for consciousness to focus upon in order for sleep to occur. So he's saying, okay, when you're awake, all your energy is going into the physical body. It's also going into the mental body. It's also going into the astral emotional body. All of this is happening. However, when you go to sleep, all that attention gets taken away. If it was all just staying on the mental level, then the thoughts and the voice in your head would not shut up and you wouldn't be able to sleep. But you do go to sleep. So the mind is also quiet. So where the conscious mind, the active mind, where is it that consciousness escapes to when you're sleeping? And I thought that was a really good question. And he identifies that where does it go? It goes to the subconscious mind. And so he says, at this something else is, of course, the subconscious and its storehouse of memory, energy, patterns. That's where we go when we withdraw attention from the physical, the emotional, and the mental in a wakeful form, right?
And just a word on the storehouse.
Yes.
So storehouse of memories, I believe, are not just your own personal memories. I think you're tapping into collective unconscious. I think you're tapping into ancestral lines, ancestral energy. I think you're connecting into all of that. I think it's like an infinite, like you have access to the timeline, baby, when you drop into the subconscious, not just your own stuff, but the stuff of everything.
Exactly. And it's all one anyway, right? So that's the thing. And he says, obviously these energy patterns are always stored there. They're always there. But normally we have our attention distributed, right? Between the conscious and subconscious minds. When we're asleep, our consciousness is not distracted by the outside world, and we naturally become more aware of the world within, which is why so many people say, keep a sleep journal. Like write down what you're, try to develop the art of consciously, what do they call it? What is that kind of dreaming? Lucid
dreaming. Yes.
Lucid dreaming, right? Try to train yourself, because this is your entire makeup as metaphor, as symbols, and in things that you can explore. And so he says that the essential point to be seen here is that the analysis of sleep from the point of view of flow of consciousness exactly parallels our earlier examination of sleep based on the analysis of flow of energy. So he says, okay, when you sleep, energy is withdrawn from the body, heart rate drops, lungs, everything, breath drops, and it goes somewhere. The energy goes somewhere. So does consciousness. Attention goes somewhere. And he uses this entire thing to basically come to the conclusion that the relationship between consciousness and energy is one of exact identity.
Say that in a more simpler way for your friend.
So if energy gets withdrawn from the body when we sleep, and and we've explored that, right? Because the physical body doesn't need as much. It gets taken. And our consciousness gets taken from the things of the wakeful state. Then it's the same it's the same thing, the same consciousness that directs both. Energy and consciousness are the same thing. He's saying, when you think of consciousness, you think, oh, there's energy and there's consciousness. But there isn't. There's just energy consciousness or consciousness energy. It's all one thing. There isn't a separation. They're both the same, which then further proves the point. Everything is energy,
which is
including consciousness. Exactly. You see? So I thought that was so clever because he takes you through this journey of what happens when you sleep. Okay, if this happens and this happens, and if that happens and that happens, then if they're both doing the same thing, then what's the difference between them both? And he even says here, the way in which we manage to center energy in the mind is by holding consciousness there. When you want to think on something, you want to use your mind to solve a problem, what do? You take your attention and you direct it there. When people say slow your breath, what do? You focus on the area and you slow it down. Thus, we can conclude that consciousness and energy, they flow together. Consciousness and energy flow together. We have seen this demonstrated from 2 points of view. Removing energy consciousness from body, emotions, or mind, as in our sleeping hours, sending energy consciousness onto the 3 planes in our waking activity, body, mind, and emotions. We should also note that this directing of energy consciousness is carried out by the application of willpower, both conscious will and the will that is run out of habit.
Okay, there it is again.
Right?
Right.
So he's saying, so what then is the exact relationship between consciousness and energy? And he says, from a static point of view, we have seen that wherever consciousness is located, so is energy. In a dynamic sense, wherever the flow of consciousness is, there is also a parallel flow of energy. What is more, it is the same application of willpower which directs both. The reason for this observed similarity in behavior of energy and consciousness is because they are the same. The relation between consciousness and energy is one of an exact identity. That's crazy.
Why do you think that's crazy?
Well, because if consciousness is energy and energy is consciousness, then where you put your mind is where you put your energy. And where you put your energy is where you put your consciousness. You see what I'm saying? It's like that creates your whole reality. Like it really then makes it so much more important to pay attention to where you are willing your consciousness, not only when you are awake, but when you are asleep and what you're doing subconsciously with your awareness. In other words, we try to think about what we do consciously in our lives, but we don't bother to look at what we're doing subconsciously. We think somehow that's it.
Well, there's an idea that that's beyond our control or automatic or living in the shadow. We can't see it, therefore we can't control it. So how would you suggest we funnel our energy into the control of the subconscious?
You know, the first thing that I have found has been extremely powerful, and it's something you can do on your own. Just notice the things that you react to. Just notice the things that trigger you.
Yes.
I do that when I do a session with anybody, because, people think, oh, you go to see some sort of therapist and that therapist has no problems. They're just 100% neutral, and they should be. And they have only 100% positive regard for the client, and they should. But guess what? That's not true. When you go to someone and you remind them of grandma, or you remind them of that girl in 2nd grade that stole my apple, or whatever the case may be, there's going to be a reaction. And of course, if you're a professional person, you notice it and you say, oh, that's funny. Okay, and let's put that there and let's reconnect here with the person that's actually in front of me. But it tells me something's up here. And so after every session, I take out a piece of paper and I write down what triggered me, how did I judge my client, what did I think, da, 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 because that tells me what I need to work on. So if you want to know what's going on in your subconscious, just look at what's triggering you.
Perfect. That's the screen of your life.
That's it.
Going back to Goddard. And then you can put into place countermeasures in your waking state, the way that you think, your affirmations, the actions that you take in order to start to correct and or control what's happening in the subconscious.
And or dissolve, I find that
Okay, dissolve,
it's
heal.
I love that word dissolve. Yeah, I
Mhm.
like dissolve because it's just taking something that you've combined together, like you're making a cake and the cake just became a hot when you're making bread or dough and there's a point at which it's just sticky and a hot mess, but all you need to do is just put a little extra flour on it and massage
Yeah.
it, and now you've got usable dough. I think of like those negative thoughts as energy that I could be using for something really positive, but right now it's locked in on something that's not giving me the yield that I want. So I'm going to just dissolve it and take back that energy and redirect it to what I want to use it for. And then it doesn't become negative. It's just a resource that I haven't tapped. And I want to just dissolve the ick around it or the thing that's keeping it from being productive and reuse it. So that is for me. I think if people just started to journal and keep track of anytime they get triggered, even like you showed me today, like when you prepare and how you leave yourself voice notes, like just get a voice note app and go, I totally flipped out at that old lady at the supermarket. You know what I mean? In my head. Like today I was freaking out over an old lady trying to make a left-hand turn because I was running late and the light turned green and I was like, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, right? Like I'm trying to and the speech, she was like dealing with her air. I think she had a little dog in the car and whatever. And I'm like, just go, right? Like I'm trying to lose my
Right.
mind. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I freaking out at this old, like, is it really gonna kill me? Is this 30-second delay gonna kill me? No. So why all this anger about the 30-second or 25-second or whatever it was? So I said to myself, where am I judging myself that I'm not moving fast enough, that I'm not getting it done quick enough? Or where is somebody else in my life that this lady's reminding of? Somebody that's dragging their feet, somebody that just doesn't take action and just get it done. Because she's just a symbol for me. Otherwise, I'd just be like, oh, this poor lady with her little dog. Oh, it must be hard for her to make it, she's
Mhm.
old. Like I
Right.
could have had compassion, but what showed up was anger. Why is there anger here? And then get curious. Don't try to push it away. Just get
Right.
curious. Why is there anger here? Let's look at this anger.
Right.
It opens the door and it softens the charge. Every time I do that and I take that little memory while it's neuroplastic, while it's in that reconsolidation form, and I bring something else to it, I mess with the way it's stored.
Mm.
So I'm slowly breaking it down like Chinese torture, one little bit at a time.
Do you know what
That's what
I'm
it feels like.
do you know what I'm thinking? We don't deserve you.
Oh,
I find you to be I like stand in awe of the way that you explain
oh
things.
no.
No, I'm telling you. I just am so grateful for your level of expertise in breaking down what are pretty heady concepts. It takes a lot for people to even approach these concepts sometimes, and being able to truly, for example, me.
Shut
But like
up.
truly,
Oh
like
yeah.
no, really though. Like we're gonna get to the next chapter. I'm gonna need your help on this. But just being able to break down these concepts and make them utilizable for us. You just have such a masterful way of sharing and teaching. I just want to share that with you because I was feeling
Thank
it. I was
you.
just like, I was the observer, just watching it
You
happen.
really
I'm just like,
deserve.
you are so wonderful. The other thing I wanted to say was when I was running the intuitive intensive programs with Trisha Carr, we always started with the foundational teaching. Like you have to know who you are in relation to the universe. We can't talk about opening your third eye and channeling until you know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the specific teachings that I offered was the difference between energy, vibration, and frequency, because we use these so interchangeably in
Mm-hmm.
spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to do so, but I kind of feel like there's a difference between those three
Oh yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And I always taught that energy was the consciousness. The consciousness that is
Mm-hmm.
exists, the alpha and the omega that just the omnipotent, omniscient aspect of who we all are. We all have this prime consciousness, prime Elenique, prime Crystal. The vibration is consciousness in movement, consciousness incarnated, consciousness expressing and or imposing its will upon the experience and animating the smaller version of who it is that we are. And then I described frequency as the wavelength emitted from my movement and my incarnation, which attracts the next thing into my life. But I like how this is lining up with how I always felt that it was, like all along.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And he gets into that too when he says that you have the conscious mind. We've now explored a little bit the subconscious, but then we have the superconscious. And the
Let's get to that.
yeah, and that's what you're talking about. You're
Right.
talking about superconsciousness or energy at its undifferentiated form. Because when it's conscious and subconscious, we are now affected by vibration, which creates a frequency. And a frequency, I like to think of it like, when you look at the frequency table, like you have the wave. Frequency is a wave. And some of us have very big waves. We have very low lows and very high highs, and they're very far apart. So we have a period of time when everything's going great, and then stuff when everything's sucking. And that's just kind of how our life is going. Some people have very short frequencies. So they go from good to bad, good to bad, good to bad. And that's the person that gets a job, loses the job, finds a man, gets divorced, like everything's happening tight together. But also, where is the frequency playing out when we look at that graph? When you're looking at the graph, you have underneath, it's like a T. And when you're in the negative zone, from 0 going negative, you can have a frequency that's taking place down there, whether it's fast or whether it's slow. It's at the lower end of the spectrum. And you can have a frequency above, and as you keep climbing higher and higher, in which case, even your bad looks pretty good to everybody else, right? You're like, okay, so frequency is sort of like, where am I hanging out? What is the percent of change in this vibratory state that is habitual? And then the vibratory state can change from moment to moment. Like one example a teacher gave me once was, imagine that it was your anniversary, and but your partner didn't call you, didn't do anything, and you're really mad about it. You're so mad. How could he forget to call me? Let's say you're in 2 separate places, or he's at work or whatever. And then someone calls you and tells you this person had a car crash, God forbid. And now your mindset's completely different, and you're no longer mad. You were just realizing how much you love the person and how much you can't wait to see them, and how you just are going to go crazy if something's wrong with them. And then 2 seconds later, the guy calls you and says, yeah, I had the car crash, but I'm okay. Everything's okay. And now the bliss and the joy that's happening, and it's all the same situation. Nothing has changed, but your vibration has changed. It's gone from complaining and negative to fearful to grateful, all in a matter of 10 minutes. That's vibration. And what is driving it? Thought and emotion.
Yep.
And nothing has changed. You're still sitting in your apartment. Right? So these things I find fascinating when we're able to get a little perspective.
Would you say the superconsciousness, therefore, in our vernacular, would be the higher self?
I do. I think it's higher self / God / all of it.
Okay.
Of which, higher self is just that part of you that is still connected to the all, is awake in the all, in the experience, in this example. I know we've talked about superconsciousness in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But I think in his opinion, and he uses a little diagram that I'll share with you here. Let's see. He makes it look like a little river. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
So he says superconsciousness is that river. And then this divot is like branches of a river, like when when you have a main tributary. And that is broken down into subconscious mind, conscious mind, and body. So the lowest expression of that superconsciousness is body, at the most matter, thickest form of expression, vibratory rate. Then you go to the conscious mind, then subconscious, because subconscious is looser. The atoms and the particles are less tightly bound together. So reality is flexible at the subconscious level. And then we can while we are in the subconscious, which is what we try to do sometimes with hypnotherapy and other methodologies, meditation, is can we jump back into the superconscious state, into the main river? And what's beautiful about it is that he says that's what psychics are seeing, people that can look at the future. What are they doing? What are they tapping into? The superconscious, because there isn't a past, present, or future for the superconscious. He says it's like when you're here and it's now. If I go down a couple of steps down the river and I wait for the river, I say, oh, that was yesterday's river, but it's still the same river. There was no yesterday or tomorrow or today. It's just the river flowing. Same information that was there yesterday is there today. Same rocks, same everything. So it's just, where am I stopping on this shore to judge whether the river is today or yesterday or tomorrow? And I thought, wow, yes, there is no, and that river analogy I thought was brilliant. Because I've heard people talk about the river, but never use that way of saying, yeah, but this is today's river and that was yesterday's river, but it's still just the river. So it's
Right.
just where you're standing. Very
Right.
Einsteinian,
Yes, and your
theory of
perception of it.
relativity. Yeah.
So what would you say is the general point of this particular teaching and bit of information?
That there are aspects to you, just like we've discussed, that there's 3 bodies, right? There's also levels or vibratory states beyond the physical body, even in the physical body, but then you have the conscious, subconscious, superconscious, and it's all energy. And so because it's all energy and one is just one way of non-differentiated and the other one is differentiated, your efforts to raise your vibration, your thinking, your conscious effort to change your patterns of thinking, and your conscious efforts to heal what is in the subconscious, to change the habits, to create new habits, open the door to having a superconscious experience, or to abiding as superconsciousness, even as you are still in the physical body. In other words, it's just up to you. Because you are that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. No, but thank you for explaining it like you are, because it's awesome. Let's move now to chapter 5 called Sleep, the Yogic State of Samadhi and Death. Can you kind of break down for us what Samadhi is?
Well, Samadhi is enlightenment, right? It's bliss, it's the oneness, it's the joining, from how I interpret it, right? Samadhi is union.
But while remaining conscious.
Yes, not being dead. You're not
embodied.
dead.
Right.
Exactly. You're still in the physical body, but you're having the experience of oneness. Yogananda, in his autobiography of a yogi, has an incredible chapter on that. And Michael Singer refers to it in the book. And I took up my book again and I was like, wow, he even has a poem. Maybe we can read it at the end, where he talks about what is that experience of Samadhi.
I was just looking at the picture of him because he shares it.
I know.
This was taken 1 hour before he passed or went into Mahasamadhi, which is an intentional, somewhat incremental detachment from the physical body into hopefully universal consciousness, which is a state above superconsciousness. And this is the value of this chapter for me, because Michael Singer is actually charting out the different, what he calls stations, where we can move our consciousness. I have a problem trying to describe what it is that I'm understanding that he's saying. So from the best of my ability, and I'm going to ask you to help me out.
Okay.
The energy, which is the consciousness as I speak, okay, the crystal prime, has the option to move my awareness and attention around. We can move it into the physical body, right? And when I am using my physical body at its uppermost levels, maybe I'm sprinting or I'm running, then all of my processes are online. I'm breathing heavily. My heart is racing. I'm completely activated in the body, and it's my consciousness that wills this. But I can also begin to remove my consciousness from the physical body, for example, when we go to sleep. And in doing so, we kind of get into the mental or the astral and in the mental planes, which is also called a conscious state, which this is where I get kind of tripped up, because consciousness, conscious energy flow, conscious mind. I'm like, okay, what? So I'm trying to figure it out. So we move from sleep into the astral and the mental planes. And then we move from that space into the subconscious. This is where we dream, right? And in each movement, from each station, from physical body to conscious mind to subconscious mind, there are correlating physical responses to this. When I'm sprinting, my body's active. My body's working at its uppermost levels. When I am falling asleep and I'm entering into the astral, my heart rate is slowing down. My breathing is slowing down. When I move from there into the subconscious, it gets even slower. This is where I begin to dream and interact with the subconscious mind. Look at all those patterns and take in all of those echoes. And from the subconscious mind, we move into the superconscious. But this is all based upon the consciousness, big C, crystal prime, and where she seeks to move her energy to. And the reason he's setting up this chapter is because he wants to prove that death is not the final thing.
Yes.
That energy continues to make this transit. It's just that it's not perceivable anymore from the vantage point of the body. So the next station after the superconsciousness is Samadhi, this state of removing your energy from the vital life force of the body incrementally so that you can exist within the all that is, the universal consciousness, the God energy, right? The state of bliss, while still being conscious, still having your faculties and awareness, and still being alive in your physical body, and then returning, making the transit back down from Samadhi to superconsciousness, subconscious, mental planes, back into the physical body fully. And while most of us don't reach Samadhi routinely or at all, we pretty much make the transit to the other stations. Would you say we do this every night? Do you think we go to the superconscious every night? To the higher self crystal where she's up there having her higher self encounters?
I don't know about the super conscious. I definitely think we go into the subconscious, and I think a lot of people just stay there with dreams and attachments, and you have a gatekeeper, which is your ego, and if you don't work on your ego consciously, it's very ravenously still there in your subconscious, and while you're asleep, because remember, the ego wants to preserve itself, and if you identify, see, even when you're dreaming, you have the sense that it's you dreaming.
Yes.
It's me in the dream. And so if me in the dream wants to continue to be in the dream, in the Maya, in the illusion, I'm not going to really let the rest of my consciousness drift up into super consciousness and, God forbid, Samadhi, and obliterate the illusion that I'm working so hard to maintain, the illusion of separateness.
So are we just all going into this big hall of mirrors when we get into the subconscious? I want to break out.
Yeah, I think that if we don't work on uncovering the traps that the ego has for us, both awake and asleep, both conscious and unconscious, then there's little hope of traveling to anywhere different just because the energy has been withdrawn from the physical body. It's still focused on the subconscious and the endless array of memories and wants that live there, and suppressed and repressed stuff that lives in there. So, I mean, it's like going to town with the same limited you, just in a completely different vibratory state, and a different illusion, an illusion that's more fluid. I can fly in this illusion. I want ice cream. It appears, it disappears. It's all very fluid there, but it's not awake. It's just as much of a lie as anything else.
Well, let me ask you this. How do we reconcile this with Neville Goddard asking you to prime yourself before dropping off to sleep and entering into the subconscious, which he would say is the animator of all of your thoughts and feelings of self and others, right? So also within the domain of the subconscious, or is that a different station where we manifest from by priming before sleep?
Neville Goddard, even though he's talking about lofty ideals, is still very much talking about physical reality. It's all about manifesting in the physical world, right? So, yes, you are priming your subconscious to manifest better dreams in the physical reality that we are dreaming, that we are. You see what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
Neville Goddard's not giving you a path to finding nirvana in God. It's not about forgetting. It's about saying, no, you are a creator and you have the power to create. Well, you absolutely do, but that's still an illusion. This is an attachment to ego. I am a creator. I am going to manifest my dream life, my dream car, my dream body, dream health, whatever it is. It's still a game. You're still in the illusion of the game. You're just playing it better. You see?
Okay.
So it's
Yes.
okay because we can be both. We can play the game. I mean, if you're going to play the game,
If you're
like
here,
have a
might as
great
well play.
house,
Yes.
have a good body, have a good meal, have a good steak. But if we're talking about something else, something completely different, then we have to keep the mind like playing over here while we sneak out and go to the higher place so that we can have perspective and realize that no matter what manifests here, it isn't real.
So correct me if I'm wrong, at least in this chapter, he doesn't actually speak to how we can break out of the Hall of Mirrors dream world and into superconsciousness, or what even the characteristics of the superconsciousness, other than what you've already explained, like
Right.
what that actually, the tones of reality, how that actually feels. But I operate under the belief that there's a difference in dreams, at least in terms of how I experience them. There's the dreams that feel like, oh, I'm just off gassing, for my physical
Mm-hmm.
body's off gassing all the things that are happening in my life. There are some dreams that are a little more meaningful than that, but not necessarily. And then there are those spiritual dreams where I feel like I'm getting messages, downloads, having encounters that are very real.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking myself now in this conversation, am I having these real spiritual dreams and visions in the subconscious hall of mirrors, or is that happening in the superconsciousness? Because I would imagine that my consciousness, big C, crystal prime, is like, okay, move up the little, move from station to station and bust out, get into consciousness, and let's do our thing up here.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you see that path is the biggest ego of all? It's spiritual ego.
How dare you?
Because we all have it,
We do.
right? We all
Yeah.
do. And bottom line is, um, any wanting is ego. Any desire for superconsciousness is ego. Superconsciousness doesn't desire, it's the water eye. It comes to the one that yields. When there's no difference to you between being the body or being the mind or being the conscious or the unconscious or being the superconscious, when there's no difference, that's when you'll experience it. Everything else is a trick. Everything else is I'll be better, more, I will be advanced, I will be awake. It's all ego. And that last one is the hardest one because it tricks us into thinking that we're spiritually more. There is no more or less.
You are preaching today, my friend. So he charts us through these different stations and up past the superconscious mind, which we may or may not occupy when we go to sleep.
Yeah.
Sounds like maybe I'm not.
Well, maybe you are.
The
I mean, you never
subconscious,
know.
we don't know. Yeah. Subconscious mind, in my body, my heart rate, my breath rate, very slow. We move from the subconscious mind to samadhi. Some of us do, yogis do.
Yeah,
And
yogis do.
there have been yogis that have been observed to consciously lower their heart rate and their breathing.
Yogananda did that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And essentially remove themselves from the body vessel except for just one toe in.
Right.
And where they go is not to the Hall of Mirrors.
No.
It's, according to Mickey Singer, it's not super consciousness. It's called Samadhi, which is a conscious dwelling in the all that is. And I apologize, I'm losing my voice. A conscious dwelling, an experiencing of the all that is. And there's one station after that, which is death. And again, I think Singer is positing that energy never dies, it never stops, it only is transformed, it shifts and it changes. And the only thing that's stopping is the observable functioning of the physical body. But what's really happening is that consciousness, conscious energy flow, crystal consciousness, crystal prime, is shifting the energy through the stations and finally to death, right? And so this is how it works. And so once I do, I have to read this passage because I'm like, all right, so when we die, we're in universal consciousness then? Is that how we get there? Up the ladder? No. He says as a footnote at the end of this chapter, and let me read it with my bottomed out voice. Singer says, it should not be concluded that this means that upon death, we all enter into union with universal consciousness. Once we have mentally and emotionally, not merely physically, broken our identification with the body, the channels are clear for conscious energy to fully enter into the superconscious state. Death leaves us all, in a physical sense, without a body, but it does not necessarily leave us without thoughts and emotions which exist on planes higher than the physical, as we discussed, those mental and astral planes. So, conscious energy is still free to be aware of these thoughts and emotions. This is how we get earthbounds. This is how we get ghosts, despite the fact that it no longer has a physical aspect with which to identify. As long as awareness is held in the astral and mental planes, then that is where we, quote unquote, we are located. It is the same as when we get lost in thought. We have left the physical plane and relocated on the mental plane, only now all of our awareness is focused on the higher planes. It is not until we learn to totally detach ourselves from thoughts and emotions that we are free to rise to higher levels. If we are to attain universal consciousness, which is a state beyond Samadhi, we must withdraw from our astral and mental bodies as well as from our physical one. So that's got me gagged and gooped because I think so many of us think, oh, when I die, I go to heaven. No, when you die, you're just on a different plane. You still may be attached.
Well, you're creating heaven through your thought system.
A thought form heaven.
Yeah, it's a thought form heaven.
Right.
And you'll go to thought form heaven until you come back to earth due to your wants and your cravings. And you'll come back again and you'll do it all again. And you'll go back to whatever other version of heaven it is that you have. And if you think you're going to hell, you'll go to hell for however long you think that you need to go to hell for. But again, it's just a thought form. Heaven and hell are in the astral.
Yes. And I think that's a really important illumination. You got to do the work now for what happens then.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like you just die and you're no longer attached to all the things you've been attached to here, all the ways of thinking, all the beliefs of self, concepts of self, the actions that you've taken. In the mental and the astral planes, they still exist. You may still be attached unless you do the work now to untether from this. So you can make that transit through the stations up to superconsciousness and beyond.
You are 3 bodies and you need to deal with all 3. Bottom line.
Okay, that's it.
That's all.
And so that's the folly of believing we're just the body, right?
Well, that's it. And that's why you can't escape.
Right.
Because you can't know what you don't know that you don't know. And if you don't know it, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. And then ultimately, even if you get lost for 1,000 years or 10,000 lifetimes or 50,000 lifetimes, what I think at the end of the day is you're just playing anyway. You see what I mean? Some horror movies, some good movies, this universe, that universe, ultimately source playing. You know, it gives me peace to think about that because it takes that pressure of having to figure it out and this timeline. If I can accept that time isn't real because I'm energy, I'm an expression of the divine, I am the divine expressing, then I can do the work, and not even the work, I can do the exploration, I can do the growth from a place of peace and joy and curiosity, as opposed to having it like a target list of like a place to get to, which is very egoic in nature.
Right.
You know what I
Or
mean?
so
That's
that
what I try to...
so that I don't get stuck.
Yeah.
Or I don't become a ghost and start
Like,
Haunting
I'd love to go
Elenique.
to heaven for a while, astral heaven,
Me
and
too.
like hang out with all my family. And it's just like a better
Yes.
version of the neighborhood we lived in when I was little. And
Hmm.
we get to eat food and I don't get fat. And I have a garden with incredible flowers of
I
colors that I've
love
never
it.
seen. Like,
Yes.
I don't mind that pit stop before
Hmm.
getting, fully enveloped back, probably because I don't remember the joy and the bliss that it was to be source. Maybe if I could, I would want to be just back there. And I think that the yogis and those people that do get to there, they have either through so many like lifetimes become so like accustomed to the feeling of that love that they crave it above all other things. Those of us that don't crave it, not to the degree that we're willing to do whatever it takes, like these people give up their lives and become monks, and that's all they do. Those of us that are still playing over here, in Barbie's dream house or whatever this is, it's like you are where you are. Just be aware and allow your consciousness to guide you at the right speed for all your parts and all your memories, and don't like stress out, because the more you stress out, the more you block the flow. At least that's where I'm at now. I used to be on a ferocious speed of like desire to evolve, and I kept praying, let me get there, I don't want to come back, and I don't want to. And now I'm like, what are you talking about? Just chill. Like, be here, do some good stuff for people, do some good stuff for yourself, read a good book, have a good margarita,
That sounds great. That sounds nice.
chill.
All right. Damn. Well,
Yeah.
but back to this picture of Yogananda.
Mm-hmm.
I just found myself, I don't know, something about his gaze. And
Oh,
this was like the way this is actually described is like potentially just a final loving smile to all the acolytes and all the followers and those that were connected to him. And it was 1 hour from the time of this picture that he consciously entered into the detachment from the body. He was young too.
very
Wasn't he
young.
like 59 or something
Yeah.
like this? Yeah, he
Yeah.
was young. Look at his
Yeah.
face. I just kind of found myself shifting into a place of trance,
Oh,
looking at
yeah.
this picture. I don't
I
know, it's
have a
just like, what?
I have a picture of him in my altar with Jesus.
Yeah.
And like my family members, they're like, that guy's eyes follow us.
What was it?
His eyes, that man's eyes follow us. I feel
Uh-huh.
like he's looking at me. I feel like he's judging me. I'm like, he's not judging you.
But
It's his
he's looking.
energy. He's here.
Yeah.
He's here. And that's
If
the thing that you feel. What you're feeling is presence.
presence. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that is real. And unfortunately, I think that because Jesus, we've had so much random images that are not even real and don't look like we don't have that. We don't have a picture of Jesus like, oh, this was Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And so we with Jesus, we have to use a little more of our imagination to create that presence for ourselves. But when you have this picture of a man that was just here a minute ago in human
Mm-hmm.
time, it's just a very intense thing. And
It
that's why I
is.
think even to this day, after his passing so many years already, there's still people that are turning to him as their guru, as their guide.
Mm-hmm.
He's not here in physical form, but he's still here.
Mm-hmm. Ascended master for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, so one final chapter that we're
Mm-hmm.
going to be discussing, which is the search based upon religious teachings. So we'll let you take us on this
Yeah.
journey.
And I'm going to keep that one short because, in
Yeah.
essence, what he does is he says, listen, guys, what religion has done is it's tried. He said, if we take let's take three major religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity. We'll see that they keep talking about the same thing. They keep talking about energy. They're saying that the universe began with a sound. In Christianity, we call it the word. In Hinduism, we call it the Om. Wherever we are, and he says over here, Amen, Om, and what was the third one that he says? Let me just see where he has it. Anyway, he uses this beautiful little story of Zen Buddhism about the ox, and that we are these people that, oh, I don't think you can see. I'm sorry, that light is so crazy glaring. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a series of pictures, and it says step one in every path is seeking the ox. He says that, let me put my glasses on, stop pretending like I don't need them. Okay. He says, at this stage, man is fully identified with his lower self, the animal and physical man. But he has an inner feeling that there must be something else. There has to be more than the everyday worldly affairs. And he begins to ask himself, who am I? In the second part of the story, it's called Finding the Tracks. In this part of life's journey, he begins to question his questions on life's meaning lead him to religious teachings. So that's what we all do, right? We turn to our different religious paths, and he becomes aware that others like Buddha and Jesus have trodden the path before and have managed to attain realization. And their teachings are the tracks, which give him the definite evidence to which he feels inwardly that there is more. And he's taught that the entire world around him is just different manifestations of the same energy. That's step 2 in the process. Step 3 is called the first glimpse of the ox. And here, he must learn to concentrate deeply, since only through concentration can he direct and focus the energy within. So now he's aware there's energy. Okay, but now I need to concentrate. And so again, we are reminded that energy is everything. It is that which is, right? So, okay, now I know there's energy. How can I concentrate myself on focusing on that energy? Step 4 is called catching the ox. So, in this stage, man has now managed to see that he is not an identity with the lower self. He is able, at least briefly, to observe the body, emotions, and thoughts as distinct from the he who is doing the observing. From this moment on, he sees the animal and cyclical selves as the ox. So instead of looking for the ox, he now sees himself as the ox. And these senses are spoiled and emotions freely flow from elation to depression as quickly as different thoughts enter the mind. So now he must train the body and the mind if he's going to be free to enter into higher states, which you were talking about how the masters slow their body down. That's the mastering of the body, right? Step 5 is taming the ox. Training the mind is most difficult. It helps to realize that even thoughts are just energy, the same as everything else. But he must break his identification and emotional ties with them if he's going to view them objectively. This is where we're doing that subconscious work, right? The important point here is that the lower self can be trained. So that's the part where we're trying to overcome ourselves. 6, riding the ox home. Once the lower self is brought under control, meaning body and mind, consciousness is centered in the spiritual self, and a state of profound tranquility exists. Always remembering that all is the same energy. Concepts such as gain and loss lose their significance. He is free of the constant demand of the senses, be they physical, emotional, or mental. So that's when you're riding it, right? 7, ox forgotten, self alone. In the truth, Dharma, all is of the same non-unique energy. The perspective of a higher self observing a lower self, the ox, has helped him to come this far, but it too is an illusion. Duality, right? This duality is no longer needed. Energy is observing energy, and thus no observation is necessary. Why would you need to observe yourself, right? 8, both ox and self forgotten. Now he touches the all is one, universal consciousness. He has transcended ego, including the most difficult of all, the spiritual ego. He has no more self-concept to limit him, no more specific qualities with which to identify. And you think it's over now, right? But no, there's more. 9, returning to the source. He is now fully seated in universal consciousness, the superconscious state. So there you have your answer. He has attained union with the energy in its pure state prior to its manifestations. He is at the source from which all vibrations begin and become manifest on the various planes. He has not only seen the truth, he is one with it. There remains nothing but absolute peace and serenity. And then 10, entering the marketplace with helping hands. He goes forth to spread the truth, just like Buddha and Jesus. His life now serves as footprints for others who are seeking knowledge. And that is how religion, or the search for truth, happens through religion. These people that have done this process of the ox leave us these kernels. And it may not work for you. Buddha's way may not. Jesus's may. Allah, not Allah, but Muhammad's may. Or whoever. Whoever is your ox, that is really just you finding your way back to yourself, and then back to nothing, back to source. And that's really how we search for God, through religion, if we do it successfully.
Amazing.
I know. That's why I told you this book is incredible, and I
It
think I will
is.
reread it and
Oh,
reread
me
it and
too.
reread it, because
Me too.
everything's in here. And to be fair, so much of it is to give credit where credit is due. These kernels are really rooted in yogic philosophy and understanding. This is really truths for thousands of years that are distilled down here in a modern way that is very well written and accessible to people that are down to earth and just want to have. But ultimately, this is yoga. This is yoga. So I love it. I love this book.
I love it as well. Thank you for recommending it.
You're welcome.
I think we should maybe consider putting The Untethered Soul on our list, maybe after all these books that we've already got coming up. But
Yes.
I really like Mickey Singer.
He's amazing.
And as I discussed when we were talking about the surrender experiment, I watched his interview with Oprah. You know, I check out Vibes, honey. Vibe check. And I just really, I just really loved his countenance. Let me ask you one final question. Okay, because I'm like caught up in this idea of what enlightenment is in relation to the voice. Is that the difference between enlightenment and realization? Is realization mastery over the voice, but still a step before enlightenment? Or what's the difference?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I think, like you said, with the word energy and consciousness and all that, we use these terms interchangeably, and I don't think I have a deep enough understanding of any of it to fully say. But to me, the non-identification with voice is a state of awareness, of becoming aware and choosing not to, and then breaking the habit of identifying to the point where I can have a habit of not identifying, right? Like when you're in a university and you're in that university and you go to that school, you know how everybody has the t-shirt? You know, I went to Wellesley College. Like, I mean, I don't even know, like every pen I had said Wellesley, everything was Wellesley. And after you graduate, you're suddenly there in this vacuum of, well, I'm not at Wellesley anymore, and I'm at my regular job, and nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. They don't know who the Tupelo are, or the a cappella group or whatever. They're like, what are you talking about? A cappella group? And like, how embarrassing, right? So there comes a point when you are away from something long enough where it is a memory of a person you used to be, this Wellesley student. But now you're not that anymore. You're not identified as, my identity is this. And so I think that that's what starts to happen as we disconnect from that voice. All of those identifications that we've created through growing up in a certain family, in a certain religion, in a certain sex, in a certain body, all those identifications start to become far away. And we start to just exist as that awareness. And that is, to me, step one. So until we don't even get to there, we're just treading water. You know what I mean?
Well, this has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's leave it right there. Oh my gosh, so many great things to think about, talk about, and to learn. So thank you again, Mickey Singer. We enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mickey Singer. We love you. Please let us come visit you.
Oh my gosh,
please be on our podcast.
Come on the podcast. Can you imagine us? We'd just be like,
we wouldn't be able to talk.
I know.
We would be hot messes. Oh my God.
I know.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful. And a reminder, next week we're starting Illusions, as Elenique said at the top of the pod. We're going to split this in two. I don't know how we're going to do that necessarily. We will tell you next week, but we're going to read the first half, discuss it. It's a bit simpler, to say the least.
It's a story.
At least. Yeah,
it's really a story.
Yeah, so we'll cover it and we'll talk about it.
That'll be fun to have a story where we don't have to like break down philosophy.
Right?
Like there is philosophy, but it's a metaphor. It's a story. It's a parable in a way. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the book after this is, remind me again.
What did we decide? I don't even know. We keep changing our minds every time something.
Is it The Way of Integrity? I think it's The Way of Integrity.
I think it's The Way of Integrity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. We're going to start that in May, which is my birthday month. I'm going to be 21. I'm going to finally have a margarita.
21.
That's right.
Love it.
Yes, party. All right. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Until then, make sure to stay warm, stay safe, stay blessed. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.